Welcome back, everyone. What a crew, what a powerhouse crew we have here. I'm Clay Walsh, I'm with The Wild, and I'm your track chair here today for remote collaboration training and education. I'm excited to be here. This is an amazing turnout for the first event that I've attended in 2 years. I don't know about you guys. This is so cool. All right, today's talk is a panel of 5 people that I will introduce right now. Mastering XR Telepresence for Remote Work, Training, Education, and Brand Activations. We have Kraus, Philip Rosedale, Cathie D Henry, Danette, Beal, and our moderator, Ann McKinnon. And so for this one, Ann is going to moderate the Q&A. This is a panel discussion. So I will not be doing the Q&A for this one, but save up your questions. We'll have a great 10 minutes discussion after they're done, which will start around 12:05, 12:10-ish. Ann McKinnon is founder of the Boolean.io, analyzing today to make the best of tomorrow's technologies. She's an expert in immersive tech, working with clients on groundbreaking projects at the intersection of gaming, entertainment, metaverse, and innovation. As a journalist, Ann reports on the current state of deep tech. She travels the world, seeing the most cutting-edge breakthroughs in art, technology, and media, interviewing leading executives like these, bootstrap startups, artists, and engineers to build an accurate picture of the immersive technology ecosystem and where it's headed. Welcome, Ann, and this lovely crew.
Thank you. Wow, that was an amazing introduction, so thank you for that. Our panelists here are an incredible group who come from different backgrounds, working with brands, working with immersive worlds, working with what it means to be meaningful and be present in physical but also virtual spaces. So what we're going to learn about today is the challenges they've experienced in the last year and a half as everyone's digital habits have changed, the amazing things that everyone has learned, and where this is all going. So I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves briefly, and we'll start from there.
Hi, I am Danette Beal, and I work at Streem. I'm a digital marketer over there. And Streem is an AI platform that helps enterprise customer experience leaders build solutions for sales, service, and commerce. So we're really excited to be here. We also help our customers meet their customers wherever they are. We help them see their space wherever they want. And we connect all that data back for larger insights. So very excited to talk about Streem and what we do today.
Hi, I'm Kraus. I founded the company Mindwise about 5 years ago, and I integrate mindfulness, design, and storytelling, and really look to empower better human connection in digital spaces. So it's been exciting. I teach a course, Digital Wellbeing, at Stanford. A lot of different clients work with me for experience design, and I've started to host in the past 2 years social and emotional experiences inside of VR, XR, Metaverse. And these experiences are a blend of psychology and some therapeutic applications, but ideally just animating human creativity inside out. So it's been an exciting ride, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cathie D Henry, and I am SVP of Growth at Media Monks, and I am really excited to be here to talk about there's a bit of a reverb. And I'm really excited to talk to you today. What we do is digital transformation, virtualization, and we also help people get ready for the metaverse. We are a digital media powerhouse with some 53 offices around the world, 6,000 people all working together with some of the biggest brands in the world. And so today I'm going to talk about some of what we've been doing, what we see today, and more importantly, we know where we're going tomorrow. So.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Philip Rosedale. 21 years ago, that's nuts. 1999, I started a company called Linden Lab that went on to create the virtual world called Second Life, and which is still going strong today. In about 2012, when the Oculus Rift Kickstarter happened around that time, I started working on trying to build a new virtual world entirely for the head-mounted displays that were hopefully coming to market, and here we are. And for the last couple of years, we have been working specifically on spatial audio, trying to do spatial audio really, really well for, particularly for large groups. So that's my background.
What a panel. So I want to start off about bringing people together. So whether it's brands, whether it's work, we're using technology to enhance the way we can communicate, enhance our business, and also enhance just the way we socialize and engage with people around us. So I think everyone here has a very unique approach, whether it's Streem connecting people for assistance, remote assistance, through audio, through brand activation, and also psychology and technology. So I wanted to ask, over the last year and a half in particular, as digital habits have changed, as we're experimenting with new ways to connect, what's been the biggest challenge, but also the most exciting thing that has happened?
I could answer that. Well, in the past year and a half, I wrote a book called Designing Wonder, and it felt like the pandemic, everything happening was really a serious time. So there was a lot of angst and malaise, and I just found myself thinking about aspects of wonder and awe and how we naturally, I think, gravitate to feeling those things, but we don't always have avenues to look at the brain and look at how we can animate more experiences that thrive in wonder and in delight and in curiosity. So for me, that was partly my own antidote to the pandemic. Doing that research over the past year and a half led me into this merge of neuroscience and psychology, and also just really celebrating what is happening in XR worlds that provide people with positive experiences. And it doesn't have to be a prescription, it can be more of an invitation. So that's what I look at, and then, form fits function. You have so many different ways that you can look at applications and look at what we're building with that in mind. So that's my thought.
It's funny that you mention that, because I also took the time to sort of incubate and go deeply into the experiences, and so connecting with people across virtual reality, virtual worlds, which is amazing. But also I spent a lot of time thinking about what this meant for, engagement and connection. So I did a lot of deep studies myself on the hardware. So there's a 50-page AR hardware report. I also did another one on XR for retail. And because everyone's looking at engagement, right? And one of the things that kind of obsesses me, but also I'm really thinking about how we then level up, if you will. Because a lot of people are saying, hey, yeah, I want to be in AR because I'm looking at engagement, but also more importantly, conversion, okay? So it's all about sales. Our doors were shut. So they're doing very literal things with these apps. And so really connecting that with the wonder and excitement. Or, on the other hand, going really deep and being very, very specific about that asset. So, for example, we did something on World of Warships, and if you're crazy about models, then you can scale it up and you can look at the thing really well. My colleague Lewis Smithingham is a total nerd, builds models on the weekend, which is an awesome thing if that's what you love, right? So for him to have this scalable model and see how the thing really works, as opposed to what would it be like to be on the sea? Because the limitations of the technology are such that you can either get super, super hyper realistic, like the shine on a vintage classic car. That's my thing. I really want to see the dials and the chrome. Otherwise, you can do something like a cookie that is a platform and there's a band on it, and then suddenly it spins and you're you're surfing on it and it opens up to a portal. So really understanding the thing, but thinking about the creative opportunities with that. So that, yes, you can use it for conversion, for shopping, for all sorts of stuff, but keep the magic.
That's definitely key to all of this, is the magic is AR and the magic is technology. But there's also a lot of, careful consideration behind the technology. And Philip, I think your experience from Second Life and from having these amazing social interactions in these virtual worlds very early on has given you unique insights into the changes that have happened over the last few years. So what specifically have you brought from your learnings and has evolved over the last year?
Well, the big thing, I've been working on this stuff my whole career, going from avatars and text chat to trying to go all the way into virtual reality with high fidelity and the headsets. But I mean, the weird thing about the last couple of years, of course, as we all know, is COVID got to set its own release date. We didn't get to negotiate with it about it. And so we had this sudden moment in March of 2020 where we were all left at home, and we were looking at all of the technologies that then existed. And in our case, in High Fidelity's case, trying to figure out kind of just the basic question of, can we get a bunch of people together in a virtual room somehow? And can we do that in a way that's reasonably accessible? Because obviously it's not going to matter if we don't do that. And so, that led us to all the experimentation that we've done in the last couple of years with spatial audio, where we said, well, if we can build the right software more on the server side, we can make this spatial audio experience that gets a lot of people feeling like they're back together again. And so it's been a lot of learning about what worked and what didn't work around that. Some things have worked, but as we all know, this is a hard problem, and we haven't figured it out yet. And there's so many pieces in close formation, but not all the way together yet.
We'll come back to Streem just now too, but I want to bounce quickly. One thing that you mentioned on a panel we did earlier this summer was fatigue as well, and how audio can play a really important role. We've all been on lots of Zoom calls, being really tired by the end of the day, not focusing. So can you actually give us a bit of insights into how important audio is for making your experience better when you're remote?
Yeah, the plus side of it, although the research on it has obviously been pretty rich, and if you haven't followed along, it's just a fascinating field to read. This whole, what about Zoom and why doesn't it feel good? What's wrong there? The audio thing that we do is just, well, actually, you're not having the experience right now. You're hearing all of us coming from those two speakers, and if we were all to talk at the same time, you would have a difficult time discriminating our voices from each other because our voices were coming from the same point in space. The big spatial audio idea is to not do that, where if two people talk at the same time, you hear them on your left and on your right, and then you're able to understand their words. The more interesting stuff about fatigue, though, is this, and it varies depending on who you are and whether you speak in public, for example, but the sensation of having a bunch of people fixedly staring at you from little windows is one that most humans simply aren't prepared for, and it triggers a norepinephrine response in your body. You want to run away, basically, and it's a small one, of course. It's not like somebody pointing a gun at you. So you get this small chemical change, and then over an hour or so, you don't notice it, but what happens is you're tired. And that's this phenomena of Zoom fatigue, or at least that's the simplest example of it. And so we all as an industry have got to figure out, how do we get beyond that? How do we fix it? But we just can't fix it with a gallery of windows where people are basically pointing their noses at you. As we all know, they're not pointing their eyes, but they're pointing their noses at you, and it's very stressful.
That's what virtual workspaces are about. Dude, they're the best. Anybody tried them? Virtual workspaces, VR?
That actually is an interesting question.
Would you
yeah.
agree that it's better than Zoom? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay, that's great. So next time we're going to meet there.
So, Danette, I think something that's very interesting to you about Streem is that you guys are rapidly, I guess, onboarding a new audience who's may never have experienced AR, never heard about it, and it's people from all different backgrounds. So what's been the challenges about that, and also how have you implemented certain design points to solve for those?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge that we face is that we do hit a very wide audience. So we develop products which we call VIP experiences at scale. So we could be talking to like a toddler, essentially, could be using our products, all the way up to my 93-year-old grandmother. So when everything got shut down, in the world that we live in, customer experience is already looked at as not necessarily a good experience. Companies are really trying to change what that looks like, and it actually helped us because everything shut down, so digital transformation took off, and things like AR video and AR technologies really took off as well. The biggest challenge that we ran into is that companies wanted to implement immediately. I want to put AR into my spaces. I want my customers to use it immediately, and what looked really good inside development did not work in the real world with my 93-year-old grandmother. So we've had to learn along with our customers about what actually works in space, and what we found is that by going back to our UX teams and constantly looking at research and looking at, agile mindsets and constantly speaking to our customers honestly about what's working and what's not working, we're finally getting to a point where we've got a really good understanding of what AR looks like with consumers in enterprise and how we can move forward and really hit a very wide audience within customer experience. So we're really excited about it.
Oh, congrats for that. Actually, Caitlin, maybe you might want to expand on this, because I think we talked earlier about smart design on a number of levels, from tech, but also to the way people interact and timing. Can you expand a bit?
Yes, definitely. I think that, well, I'm looking at the banner that says Thrive XR, if you have a chance to look at it, and the person is kind of augmented with all of this device. And you know, what does it mean to thrive? I think about myself as an animal body first, and sometimes I need to remind myself to actually arrive in a new space, whether it's XR. I mean, we can really tune ourselves. And I think that I've been thinking a lot about the rhythms of life, and how maybe in the past year we've been missing rhythms, rituals, the things that we share in community. And Don Norman is one of my heroes of design. He has a triad of design considerations. There's the visceral design elements, and that would be kind of what your gut feels when you enter a space or when you enter an experience. And then there's behavioral, like how do I interact with it? How does it make me feel? And so we can think about inclusive design and how accessibility is open to different types and different preferences, and just kind of slow down a little bit before we start to just really roll out something that aspires to be universal. And yeah, and I love his third element of design, which, you know, has been kind of updated, and it's reflective. So I think we're in this age and stage of really being intentional about our choices, maybe choosing less and saying, with reflective design, does something I'm using actually fit my identity? And that's a pretty big deal, because we get to choose as individuals what we use, how we interact. You know, I'm thinking about also what Philip was saying about just tuning the vocals and tuning the audio. And yeah, I've heard before, I don't know if this is true, but with the audio sense, we want to feel safe in an environment first. Like the way we take in audio is first in our brain trying to identify the sound and see if it makes us feel safe or not. So yeah, it's an interesting time to slow down with design and to get really playful, and then to test with a lot of different audiences and say, how do you feel? How do you feel? And, you know, I really want to slow down and listen rather than roll out a product that might not be thoughtful or meaningful.
Philip, did you want to say something quick about audio? Or?
Well, I'll say a different thing looking at our Thrive picture here. The headset is pretty exclusionary. People don't feel safe when they blindfold themselves. This is one of the things that we realized in 2019, and it made us start working on audio with much more enthusiasm. We realized that the headset itself was was going to so separate people in terms of their willingness to use it. And it was one of the grave concerns, indeed, that we had. And I think as we continue to kind of push forward with enthusiasm around these headsets, it's an important thing to consider. So audio, yes. I mean, certainly hearing things behind you or all around you creates a sense both of peripheral awareness and potentially of alarm. But the visual information is even more striking. Putting someone in a first-person view where you concatenate their field of view, so they're looking through a tunnel, and having that person know that they are blinded, they're blinded to the people that are in the real world with them, potentially close to them, is an intensely different experience for different people. So that's an example of where we've got a long way to go to make this stuff work. You need to be able to see through these things, for example, easily.
See, Philip, this is, I absolutely love the work that you've done, and I'm a big fan of Second Life and the ground that you broke for so many of us. But, you know, after a long career in banking as a technology specialist, I actually went back to school and studied virtual reality filmmaking, and certainly spatial reality is important. But the reason why I decided to drop everything and to focus on virtual reality and now XR and metaverse was because I found that really empowering, visually, like, amazing. I love vanishing from the real world, not because of some dystopian reality. I mean, you know, I live well, I live in LA, it's all good. But still, there's something so powerful about going into this other world where everything is possible, and finding your communities and finding experiences that engage and delight. And the interesting thing is, we talk about this as if this is a new medium. It's not new at all. I've just finished a course for LinkedIn Learning and blah, blah, blah. It'll come in January. But the point is, what I say is that, these technologies have been around for a while. What we need to do is use them differently. Okay, so at the dawn of the internet, everyone's like, oh, let's put our investor relations report on here. Let's put some more documents on here. It's not about documents. And now in the age of virtualization, we need to think about this, like Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. Think about the media differently. Use it differently. Unleash our imaginations. And then we will find our communities. We will find our friends. During the pandemic, spent a lot of time with people that I'm meeting for the first time. And I'm like, wait, we were in Burning Man together. Do you remember that? We were like playing on a boat. And those moments were as real to me. Those experiences, those emotions are real. So I wouldn't discount that. It's just a question of the level. I'm not an auditory person. Music, nothing to me, not really. But visual, I will remember something I've seen almost forever. So tap into your audiences differently, engage your audiences. And this is what you were saying. What is that audience experience? Like my friend Lewis, he loves his boats. And so when people first came to him and said, why don't we do this with the boats? He was like, no, this is my life. Like, I love making models. This is what we want to see. So tap in, find the interest, whether they're 93 or they're, 15. What is it that makes them love that medium and deliver it?
Absolutely. I think here we're talking about experience across the board. Because whether it's work, whether it's brand, whether it's socializing, if the experience isn't there and the tools aren't there to help and encompass a full embodied, session, then you kind of lose the value in what you're creating. We also talked about avatars, and this touches on the points we've spoken to you about inclusivity, which is when you have someone coming to a space in VR, often you have an avatar. When it's AR, you are embodying yourselves. But if you don't have the interfaces or design or avatars for your diverse audience, you're automatically excluding people or alienating people from the platform. So I think having these inclusive mindsets right from the beginning is so important to reaching the audience that your brand or company wants to reach and also embrace. Can we, Catherine, actually, maybe I'll go back to you very quick.
Talk about finding my brown hands in VR. I actually mentioned this in a tweet. I was like, I'm really tired of holding out and finding these big masculine bozo hands, and they were never mine. Could never put the color to it. And after a while, you're just it's just annoying. And I was attacked on Twitter. I'm pretty diplomatic, but this time I decided I was going to just speak my truth. and I got kind of attacked because they were like, okay, build it yourself. And it's not about that, it's about universality. But on the flip side, I actually love being an avatar. I'm kind of half avatar there. I'm not quite there yet. Next year, you'll see me in a spacesuit. But seriously, I really feel like we should be able to have our, our purple hair and do whatever your thing. Sometimes I want to be, feminine or look more or less like me, but 10 times cooler. And then the other times, there's this in VR chat, I use the skeleton guy, which is lucky because once I walked into a clan meeting and that would have been very uncomfortable. But it was literally clan meeting. It was kind of scary. But the avatars, I think it's freeing. And I think that people are connecting as who they want to be. And I love the freedom of it. And so this morning, when they said, do you want to be photorealistic or whatever, I'm like, I think this demographic skews a bit older. A lot of younger people, they walk around in outfits that as kids we probably never would have, and they see themselves as these other people because they are different people on different platforms. Quick question, who wants to be photorealistic when you go to something? Who absolutely is cool with being a character, like a unicorn, a mixed whatever? Yeah, right? It's freeing. So that's my view, and I'm all for it.
An interesting observation about this, because obviously avatars are so fascinating. And as you said, Catherine, that the avatar frees you to explore and present and experiment in a way that is tremendously empowering. So you have these weird things where you have these orthogonal things like blindfolding people that are, one thing's a challenge and another thing's an empowering tool. So it's difficult, right? But certainly the avatar is fascinating. I would say one thing though. I have 4 kids, 2 of them are teenagers, and the 2 teenagers, one boy and one girl, I talk to you about this stuff all the time. And one of the things that's fascinating regarding photorealism is that they absolutely, positively, you don't know what I'm going to say, right? You're wondering, demand it. This is interesting. One of the things I asked my kids were, snap lenses, you all want to be avatars in Snapchat. And they said, oh my God, no, never. We would never do that. How fascinating, right? What
Just Snap, because in Snap, it's all about the face. Like, I don't want to be an avatar in Snap. It's about, like, becoming, like, super cool and trying on new looks in Snap. So.
And if you can be a whole avatar, but the thing that they say, which is fascinating and intensified by COVID, is that they demand in one-to-one live interactions, not sending messages, not goofing around, not even maybe exploring a space with strangers. In one-to-one interactions with their actual friends, they demand authenticity. Fascinating. They're essentially trying to close the gap. And I think those of us who are older may come to it, as many of you did with the, I want to be a unicorn, with this kind of a desire and a willingness to sort of explode outside of ourselves. And I think it's fascinating how that's changing with different ages.
I think that it occurs to me that there's a poet, John O'Donohue, and he says there's a wild energy inside our soul wanting to get out. And it's that release, that avenue, and also the multiplicity. Like, I do think that there's ideally an authentic reason underneath why you might role play as a certain avatar, but it doesn't have to be fixed. Like, I love the idea that I can shapeshift and I can be in a certain mood, express that a certain way. So maybe we're at a stage of translanguaging where the things that we choose, the interactions, the way that the body moves, we're not just neck up, brains in a vat. We're actually doing things and interacting in different ways. And maybe the process actually leads people. This is interesting because I think that empathy is sometimes heavy-handed, where people say, oh, it's an empathy experience. And, I think that you can't classify something as an empathy experience. It's actually the person who's having the experience that gets to choose how much they open up and how much they're intentional about their connection inside and also their curiosity about other people and their experiences.
I call that transhuman.
Yeah, I love it.
I also think it's really interesting. I have a 13-year-old son, and he is very aware of his own security. So looking at putting pictures of him on the internet, he is very aware that that's not something that he wants. And so he actually goes more towards avatars in that sense because it gives him that security and it doesn't get his face out there. So I think in this way, we're going to see a shift with the demographics and the generations coming up because they are very aware of their sense and who they are in their real life and who they are in their avatar life and protecting those. So that makes sense to me that on Snap, you would have a photorealistic picture of you and have a one-to-one conversation, but on other platforms, you don't want that out there.
When brands or companies, clients, friends are coming to you and asking, I want to enter into this space, and this is the reason why, are there any big misconceptions about like interactions and the benefits, or even how to go about creating an experience like this? Because it's so far off from the way a lot of people operate, but it's becoming so much more of a norm in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, for us, it's we have customers that come to us and they have a lot of different demographics that are really worried about, who comes to them and who connects on what channel and what that looks like. So having somebody who is even, my age might not be necessarily one who wants to show their home on video and wouldn't want to have that experience. So we definitely see there's a gap in between what people are comfortable and what people are not comfortable with and how they want to interact. And we're keenly aware of that within our products. We're always trying to build experiences that are very easy to interact with. So we're trying to bring down the barriers of making it difficult and making it seem like it's something that is, an emerging technology that they don't know what it is and it's more scary. So we're trying to make that more comfortable for them so it's easier for them to interact. And then we're also helping our customers, with the talking points of, talking about how to interact with AR and what that looks like and trying to bring down those barriers so it's easier to interact with.
Philip, you've probably done hundreds, maybe thousands of these events in the last year alone. Do you have any biggest surprises or something that you've learned that's really changed the way you approach not just audio, but interacting in these online spaces?
I don't know yet. I mean, there's so much. One thing I would say is that our ability to predict the implications and the the ways in which people are going to use technology today are harder than ever. As someone who's been in this industry for a long time, or actually just in tech for a long time, as expected, our ability to predict the future has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And it's part of why we're all anxious right now, is because the rate of change is so high. I would say things we have learned are things like more is different. That's to quote a famous physicist who said, more is different. I love that. When you have a lot of people in a space interacting with each other, able to hear each other in our case, there is a profoundly different sense of that experience than there is if there's a few people. And that's something that I would sort of call out as a general thing to think about, and a piece of advice for everybody here is that these, for example, these sharded experiences in which you replicate worlds and then have 10 people in each world are very, very fundamentally different than, say, what we have here, where we have 100 people together in one space. So that's one thing I would call out that I think we've learned by sort of looking at it solely in the audio domain. I guess the other one is agency, moving around. Your ability to move your perspective in any way that you can is very, very powerful and makes things extremely different than, say, listening to a live audio room like in Clubhouse or something. It's very different to be able to move around in the room.
And Caitlin, earlier we actually talked about mindfulness, and I think this is a very interesting point because we talk about it a lot, but we don't always, I think, necessarily define it, especially in the context of immersive technology. So I want to give that tap to you.
Well, the definition for me is always fluid, but I think anything, caution the buzzwords. If something mindfulness, it can easily be commodified, or, I think about the awareness factor and intentional attention and appreciation without too much judgment. So for me, explorations in mindfulness and in meditation has led me to slow down and sometimes to do just that, to detach from one view or detach from trying to prove something. And I think that, we can apply that to all of the experience designs because in the moment, when you're in an experience, some people will say to me, oh, XR, it's a fantasy world, it's not real. And I'm like, well, it occupies time, and time and attention are our most precious commodity. So if we're using that, then I feel like it is real. It's really there. It's an investment. So yeah, I think my 3A definition of mindfulness would be aware, advancing, and authentic. And, if you can combine those and have some agency too, maybe as the 4th A, you have a pretty great mindful experience when you're inside a system that ideally is meant to connect you.
Yeah, Catherine, do you have any advice? So we'll go with any advice for brands. We'll touch very briefly on KPIs and how we measure success, and then any closing thoughts, and we'll open the floor for questions. But yeah, any advice for brands who are coming to work with Media Monks or in this space?
Yeah, I would say come to us with an open mind because, again, this is not a new medium, and we've been doing this. Digital media is in our DNA. We were founded at, as I say, at the dawn of the .com era, so 2000, and now things have evolved. And so you can't just say, hey, we want to do the exact same experience as so-and-so, and they went viral. It's like, forget that. We just wrote a paper for the IAB, if anybody has access to that. It is the best practices. So I created best practices for AR creators, and then I also did a piece on the outlook for AR creators at the end. So I would recommend that. But basically, yes, of course it can engage. It can, you can get registration and engagement and ignite, intention and all sorts of things. So yes, you can drive returns, but also the creative has got to be at the heart of it. It's not It's not the other way around. That's what gets people really excited about it. And please, let's not start with a conversation with NFTs. Yes, I can help you monetize it. I can make you, I can really elevate that concept to something that's much more commercially viable. But let's not start with the NFT conversation. Let's turn it on around and make it something that people want over time and also want to revisit and share.
Awesome. So I think we've learned quite a bit about the ins and outs of how to create and what to keep in mind for these different experiences we're having online, whether it's AR or VR, remote collaboration, social experiences. But how do we measure success? I mean, it could be feedback, it could be metrics, it could be the impact. So
I'm just going to briefly just delineate them, and I'm sure we'll probably say the same things, but I call it the ERIC system. So it's engagement, it's interest, and intent, so purchasing intent, conversion, registration, and fundamentally, conversion to sales. So, and sharing, sorry. So all of those things, you can look at them depending on what your specific KPI is.
Yeah, for us, we work with CX leaders who are constantly scrutinized. So they have to be intentional about every single click their customer has, every minute that they're on a call with a customer. So trying to incorporate something like AR and emerging technology into their business seems really scary. So almost the very first conversation we have to have is about KPIs, but every single person is going to be different because they have a different mix of systems and a different mix of what they want for their specific company. So the biggest KPI that we really have seen is we have one customer who's in customer support, and we talked about community earlier, and Traeger Woodfire Grills is a great example of a company who wants to create a community with their customers. So they have the Traeger hood. I'm sure there are passionate grillers in the audience. I see a lot of people that look like they could be passionate grillers. And it was really important for them, first and foremost, to essentially have an experience that had that community feel across every touch point with every single one of their customers. Now, when you talk about KPIs and you talk about having a very hands-on experience, that's very costly. And it's not something that brands want to do at scale. And so what they ended up doing is they wanted to be able to focus on very specific situations. So they had a very specific strategy, and they decided to incorporate our Streem AR video for their warranty. And out of that, not only were they able to have a better experience, increase their loyalty, they actually had their customer satisfaction, which is a big score in customer experience, go up to above 90, but they were able to reduce their warranty spend by 51%. So that's almost unheard of in customer experience, and it's something that we're seeing with a lot of our customers. And I think it's going to be instrumental in changing. I think it's one of those proof points that if you use AR in practical ways, it will help change the perception and how we find those KPIs and how we use it in the future.
Yeah, actually, next door, they were also talking about some of the conversion rates, and Shopify has said that they've got 200% return on experience. And so it really does, and it lowers the return rates pretty significantly. We've seen that from Wayfair and from multiple sites. So yes, it can drive return on experience, as I say, just broadly. And so, again, in this AIBA report, that it does outline different case scenarios for different, and they're not all ours. So it's not just a plug for me, but it's agencies from around the world. So I think that there is a case to be made. So be fearless about approaching this, and really have that open dialogue with whoever you're working with about how do you get there.
I would say in closing, Mindwise is a design consultancy, so I run experiences and workshops for groups and teams, leadership teams too, that then can disseminate it, and really using aspects of designing wonder and showing people how to create that bridge. Ideally, it's a hero's journey where the experience starts before you even use any of the tech. And it's been really meaningful to look at relationships, well-being, and also creativity, and how we measure those metrics, whether it's output or whether it's customer satisfaction, engagement levels. So there are a lot of different ways to look at it, but I think we need new metrics for what well-being looks like across the board after this experience.
I also want to say one of the reasons I'm thinking about psychology, and one of the reasons why people will buy more likely from actually trying something on before they buy it, it's the illusion of ownership. And it's a weird thing because you can't physically touch it, you can't bring it home, but seeing it in your home, seeing it on your body is one of the things that psychologically, catalyzes people to purchase things. And so it's really knowing all of these things that are happening in the consumer's mind and that journey that really help you build a case to do something successful for yourself.
I'm going to jump in just because we're running short on time, so I want to fill up just quickly. There was something you told me earlier too, was that the translation, so when you're speaking with avatar or another human being in a space, you can do the translation above their heads in real time. So you're also enabling communication that has never been possible before across cultures in a time where our cultures have really, like, the borders have closed in the last year. So it's been so, so important to be able to have that communication and cultural exchange. So we're talking about success, but I also think impact. So do you want to talk a bit about that before we close up?
That was great, you said it. Yeah, I mean, it's a good tech change that's happened that I think is a force for good, is this ability to immediately translate between people. And we've played with it a lot, and it definitely feels great. You know, it's a great example of how, yeah, being able to sit and literally talk to somebody in real time is different than watching a, you know, subtitled movie. It's amazing to, like, have somebody talk right at you and then see their words translated to your language.
Thank you so much. We're going to open up the floor for Q&A now. I think we've got 5-10 minutes.
Let's see, make sure I'm still on here. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to take your mic, and I'm going to, is my mic on? Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Questions? We have about 10 minutes. All right.
All right, hello. Yeah. Hi, yes, thank you all for delivering a very substantial and I think nuanced talk here. Great exploration of some of these characteristics. So I'm one of the organizers of MIT Reality Hack, and ironically, we've traditionally been a very physically based event. Get everybody in a room together, you know, work on VR stuff over the course of a few days. COVID has spurred us to consider ways we could use virtual reality as part of the event. And one of the things we've noticed in our explorations has been that there are some activities where VR works really well, you know, like getting people in conversation groups, maybe getting people ideating on ideas for a project, and then somewhere it's just kind of onerous, like watching a panel, for instance. I was curious, in your folks' experience, whether you've seen other examples of things where VR works really well or really poorly, or maybe types of social interactions that can only happen in VR.
I am I had a show or experience in AR for about 6 months. And so every Saturday we'd meet up, we'd talk about what's happening. We called it Siskel and Ebert in VR, about the coolest stuff that was happening, and then we'd go on world trips. And one of the things that I really recommend, and you know, MIT, this is for what it's worth, I would really recommend to just stop being literal. I mean, because a lot of people will say, take our office and make it in VR. Why? You know, why can't we just, you know, there are no laws of physics, let's explore that. Why can't we meet around a campfire? Why can't we just like play some crazy frisbee golf? So it's really about not being literal, really starting with the, what do we want to do, it's just we want to meet and connect. And the other thing is, I'm a big fan of real-time holography. I don't know if we did an event a couple of weeks ago with Eighth Wall, and we were projected into the space. So we don't necessarily always have to travel to the other space. Why can't Princess Leia come to us? And so I'm a big fan of the technology that exists today. So this isn't something a tomorrow technology, this is a today technology. And so we need to look at the entire spectrum of things that we want to do to achieve the end result, and then figure out what that medium is.
I would actually second that. So I have put on events for a large part of my career and working in that space, and specifically for the past 2 years have worked with very large companies and struggled with switching over from physical events in space to virtual events. And I think we're ready for it to get flipped on its head. You know, speaking of my 13-year-old son, he could spend hours on a chair playing Fortnite or Apex or whatever is the newest video game that he loves, and he is constantly moving around and inside that space and interacting with his friends. And that is really the way that he interacted during COVID and still continues to interact to the bane of my existence. But I think that traditionally events have been looked at the way that we've looked at them for the past 50 years, and it takes somebody to flip it on its head and think about VR differently, and exactly what you said, what that experience looks like. Maybe it's frisbee golf or something, that it's going to change the way that we do events in the future.
I've been a part of MIT Reality Hacks, so we've probably seen each other there. I think again, you know, we've said something different, something that shakes up the senses. Maybe it's leading people to more plasticity and more creativity, so it's not actually the end point, but part of the process to integrate VR and not have it be binary either or. I'd say that's the ideal.
Question. I saw your hand go up.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rylan Daniels. I'm a AR developer, and I'm 19 years old, so I actually also think that self-expression in virtual worlds is quite important, and not just having an avatar. And I was curious, like, in the future, do you think, like, avatars, it'll be more custom designed by the users, or do you think it'll be more proprietary, like Fortnite, which has custom things, but it has a preset selection, or do you think people will get to customize it fully and like self-express themselves in the future? Thank you.
I have to just say shout out to Virtual World Society. Hi, Rylan. Yeah, so, well, just quickly, I think Frankenstein is a great example. We both have a passion for Frankenstein. You can build a world based on that, find people, like Catherine had said, who are interested in the things you're interested in, and then, you know, maybe it can be like a new storytelling where people start to create. You know, I think we're in the modern age of Frankenstein 200 years later, where it's like, what makes a human? And how can we take those themes and then have new avatars we create and shapeshift?
You know, I think that there's something to be said about this moment, because I'm exploring developing avatars for myself, and I'm like crazy about this stuff right now. And I love I mean, look, eventually you can go into a store like the app, you know, the app store, or even a physical store, and buy a t-shirt. But ultimately there's somebody who's really great at designing t-shirts. So if that's your thing, go for it, because this is going to be, for me, a huge area going forward. And there are always going to be different manifestations, and there will be professional avatars like Lil Michaela who are representing brands who need constant maintenance and that content and updating. So that's a huge industry, and I expect it only to get bigger.
I think that, I mean, a couple of thoughts about that, Ryan. One is I'm sure you'd agree, the sort of top-down idea of Fortnite, where you are playing within the explicit context of a game, really defines what you want out of the avatar, right? Whereas the bottom-up, I'm going to call it bottom-up experience of you sort of building your own avatar to walk into a room and express yourself, I would say that those two are profoundly different things. Like, my Second Life experience has been so useful in that regard. Like, I don't think there's a way to, in my opinion, I don't think there's a way to go to better and better avatars in Fortnite that eventually become us. I don't think it works that way. There's some sort of a discontinuous change. Letting people really edit themselves with a extraordinary degree of freedom, basically, is what is necessary to get to the sort of avatar that Catherine is talking about becoming. That is certainly not going to, Catherine's path will certainly, I believe, not be to sort of start with a game character. It'll be to define herself in a very deep way. I think the other thing I would say is to you is, or I'd almost sit outside and ask you this more about this, facial expressions are simply just not there yet, particularly for people that don't yet know each other. And so any attempt to use facial information arrayed on an avatar where you don't know the person that you're talking to is just a fail right now. It's one of those things, we're aspirationally interested in it. We are not there yet, not at all. So I think that's one of the things that's like a very important design consideration. People that don't know each other and are not like completely immersed in this stuff like some of us are not going to be comfortable communicating with faces, basically, on avatars.
I'm going to flip it on its head just a little bit and talk about it from a market perspective. We are seeing a lot of really cool things with our customers, just from a customer experience perspective, and what they're doing in capturing spaces and being able to make things realistic. You know, you can, I don't want to steal their thunder, but what Lowe's is doing with their spatial commerce is pretty amazing, how you can scan a room and measure spaces. I see there being an attachment to the customer experience and what customers want to see in the future, and your generation growing up and what you want to see in those type of experiences, and that being a flip for big brands. And I don't think it's very far away. And just seeing what we can do with data today and the type of data that we can have that consumers can grab themselves, I personally think that it's something that we will be able to customize that, and it won't be such a big hill to go up, and we're starting to reduce those barriers and being able to do that type of technology.
Prada just announced their latest avatar, Balenciaga has an army.
Hey, thank you all so much. This is a talk about telepresence and work, and I love that we got into like the human elements of like story, engagement, safety. I'm curious, what do you see is like the biggest potential value, or what's the thing that you're really looking forward to in XR for work? Just to kind of bring it back to top. Time for audacious claims and predictions.
I think that work and life have stopped being a separation, so I think it's really interesting, that aspect, and also from client feedback, it's really a time of disruptive change where a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm not having one career path, I'm actually learning how to be even more diverse. And again, we go into psychology because it takes a certain resiliency and a certain curiosity, even in the midst of intense physical fear. So I think that this nature of work is really changing, and people are starting to have, maybe ironically, a different relationship with their local sphere that can support a global mindset. So, this could be another talk, how do we manage that bridge of really being present and being in community in our local spaces, and then having XR lead us to even greater global accessibility and connection?
I think for me, I'll answer your question. The biggest thing is, XR for work and working remotely has really opened up an exponential digital transformation. Companies were already starting to go in that direction, and now it's only sped it up to where they have to get there now. The thing that's really cool about XR and spatial is spatial data. It's data that we've never seen before or been able to capture, and so that to me is really exciting. There's a large stewardship to that in what we do with that data, but it's really exciting to see, how brands and how big companies can learn from that data and build, for us anyways, better customer experiences. And what does that look like in the next 5 years? Things do turn around pretty quickly. Every 2 years, technology is changing. And, this is a time that I think we're going to see some exponential changes just with XR and remote work.
Thank you so much.
I think our speakers will be here, so I know there's probably another panel, but if we can all meet out and continue the conversation in the hallway, we'll be here.
Yeah, I just want to add that if anybody's interested, we've written a document on the metaverse, and it does outline 10 major trends for the future. It's on the featured section of my LinkedIn page, but it's metaverse, making the metaverse, Media Monks. Thanks.
Let's give a huge round of applause to Anna and this lovely crew.